When most people feel anxious, sad, or unmotivated, they look outward toward therapy, productivity hacks, or even medications. But what if I told you that a massive lever for your emotional health is something you've been doing 3 times a day your entire life? Food. Yes, the nutrients you consume don't just fuel your body, they shape your brain, dictate your hormone levels, and influence the neurotransmitters that control your emotions. Today, I'm going to show you how food is not just fuel, it's information. And that information has the power to completely change how you feel, think, and behave. When we talk about how food affects our mood, most people think of comfort eating, ice cream after a breakup, or coffee to boost energy. But beneath these surface-level associations lies a profound, science-backed truth. The nutrients we consume don't just fill us up. They rewire our brain chemistry in real time. Every bite you take is information. It's sending chemical signals that affect how you feel, how you think, and how you act. Inside the brain, emotions are regulated by a complex orchestra of molecules called neurotransmitters. These are chemical messengers like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA that determine whether you feel calm, focused, motivated, or anxious. The critical insight here is that these neurotransmitters are built from the nutrients you eat. For instance, serotonin, often called the feel-good chemical, is synthesized from an amino acid called tryptophan. If your diet lacks adequate levels of tryptophan, which is found in foods like turkey, eggs, and oats, your brain simply can't produce optimal amounts of serotonin. And low serotonin has been directly linked to depression, anxiety, and poor sleep. The same goes for dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with motivation, reward, and goal-oriented behavior. Dopamine is synthesized from the amino acid tyrosine, which comes from protein-rich foods like chicken, almonds, and dairy. If your diet is deficient in quality protein, your ability to produce dopamine suffers. You might notice this not just as a lack of motivation, but as difficulty focusing, lower drive, or even emotional numbness. In fact, many symptoms that are often pathologized as psychological issues, burnout, apathy, restlessness, can be traced back to deficiencies in these very building blocks. But it goes even deeper. The enzymes that convert these amino acids into neurotransmitters require vitamins and minerals to function properly. Magnesium, B vitamins, iron, and zinc all play critical roles in neurotransmitter synthesis and signaling. When any of these are deficient, the entire mood-regulating machinery of the brain begins to falter. It's like trying to build a house with no nails. Everything weakens, and over time, the system begins to break down. This is why many people report feeling emotionally flat or mentally foggy when their diet is poor, even if they can't point to any specific life stressor. This doesn't mean food is the only factor in mental health, but it is one of the most powerful and most overlooked. And what makes it especially compelling is that it's something you can control multiple times a day. Every meal is an opportunity to support or sabotage your brain chemistry. We often search for solutions to our emotional struggles in therapy rooms, pharmacy shelves, or motivational seminars. But often the most immediate and powerful intervention is sitting right on our plate. So when we talk about food as a source of energy or weight control, we're missing its most vital function. Food is a neurochemical instruction manual. It tells your brain what kind of day you're going to have, whether you'll be calm or irritable, focused or foggy, resilient or reactive. The relationship between food and mood isn't hypothetical, it's biochemical, and it's happening inside you right now. Every time you eat, you're influencing your brain's ability to generate the very chemicals that make life feel balanced, meaningful, and emotionally rich. That's the real power of nutrition. Imagine you're having a really good morning, you feel alert, focused, and emotionally balanced. Then by mid-morning you suddenly crash. You get irritable, anxious, maybe even a bit foggy. You reach for another cup of coffee or a quick snack to try to bounce back. Most people chalk this up to stress or lack of sleep. But what's often happening beneath the surface is something much simpler and more biological: a swing in your blood sugar. Blood sugar, or blood glucose, is the body's primary energy currency. It fuels not just your muscles but also your brain. In fact, the brain is one of the most glucose-hungry organs in your entire body, and it's incredibly sensitive to changes in glucose availability. When blood sugar is stable, the brain functions smoothly. Mood is balanced, focus is sharp, and energy is sustained. But when blood sugar spikes rapidly, say after a sugary breakfast or a refined carb-heavy snack and then crashes, the brain enters a state of alarm. This crash doesn't just make you physically tired, it impacts your emotional state. During a blood sugar crash, the body releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to compensate for the sudden lack of fuel. These hormones are meant to keep you functioning, but they come at a cost. They increase irritability, anxiety, and reactivity. You may feel panicky for no obvious reason or overwhelmed by minor problems. This isn't just a psychological response, it's a physiological one triggered by unstable blood sugar. This roller coaster effect becomes especially problematic when it happens several times a day. People who regularly consume high glycemic foods, like pastries, white bread, sodas, and many packaged snacks, often find themselves on a loop of mood swings without realizing that their emotional turbulence is being driven by what's on their plate. Over time, these constant spikes and crashes can desensitize the body's insulin response, making blood sugar regulation even more difficult, and leading to longer-term mental health challenges, including chronic fatigue, irritability, and low-grade depression. What's particularly fascinating is how blood sugar levels can even influence decision-making, patience, and social behavior. Studies have shown that when people experience blood sugar dips, they're more prone to arguments, less tolerant of frustration, and more likely to act impulsively. The phrase "hangry" isn't just a joke, it's a real biological phenomenon rooted in how unstable glucose levels affect the brain's ability to regulate emotion and self-control. On the other hand, maintaining steady blood sugar through a balanced intake of protein, healthy fats, fiber, and complex carbohydrates provides a consistent flow of energy to the brain. This promotes emotional stability, mental clarity, and better stress resilience. It doesn't mean you need to eliminate carbohydrates, but rather that choosing slower digesting nutrient-rich sources like oats, legumes, sweet potatoes, and vegetables can help the body release glucose more gradually and evenly. In essence, your emotional state is tethered to your metabolic state, and your metabolic state is directly shaped by your food choices. That's why two people with the same stressors can react so differently. One breaks down, the other stays calm, and often the difference isn't just psychological resilience, it's blood sugar regulation. If you want to improve your mood, lower anxiety, and feel more grounded throughout the day, stabilizing your blood sugar is one of the most immediate and powerful strategies you can adopt. It's not about avoiding sugar forever, it's about understanding that the rhythms of your blood sugar create rhythms in your emotional landscape. Once you become aware of this connection, you start to see food not just as fuel or flavor, but as a daily tool for emotional mastery. Most people think of the brain and the gut as entirely separate systems. One handles your thoughts and emotions, the other digests your food. But science has now revealed something profoundly different and deeply transformative. Your gut and brain are in constant bidirectional communication. In fact, the gut has such a significant influence on mood, behavior, and mental clarity that researchers often refer to it as the second brain. This communication highway is known as the gut-brain axis. At the center of this axis is the vagus nerve, a long, powerful nerve that runs from the brainstem all the way down into the abdomen. It carries signals in both directions, allowing your brain to influence gut activity and your gut to shape brain function. What's astonishing is how much of that signaling actually originates in the gut. It's not just the brain giving commands, the gut sends a massive volume of information upward, including messages that directly impact mood and emotional balance. Inside the gut resides the microbiome, a vast and dynamic ecosystem of trillions of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms. These microbes are not just passive passengers, they play active critical roles in your health. They help digest food, synthesize vitamins, regulate your immune system, and perhaps most importantly for our discussion, produce neuroactive compounds, substances that influence the nervous system. Many of the chemicals involved in mood regulation, like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, are produced or modulated by these gut microbes. Take serotonin for example, the neurotransmitter commonly associated with happiness and emotional stability. About 90 to 95% of your body's serotonin is actually produced in the gut, not the brain. The gut lining contains specialized cells known as enterochromaffin cells, which work closely with gut bacteria to produce serotonin. This serotonin then interacts with the nervous system, helping to regulate not just mood, but also digestion, pain sensitivity, and sleep. An imbalance in the gut microbiome, often caused by poor diet, chronic stress, antibiotics, or lack of fiber, can disrupt this serotonin production, leading to feelings of depression, anxiety, and irritability. But it doesn't stop there. The microbiome also influences the permeability of the gut lining. When the balance of healthy and harmful bacteria is disturbed, it can lead to a condition commonly referred to as leaky gut, where the gut lining becomes compromised and allows inflammatory substances to enter the bloodstream. These inflammatory molecules can cross the blood-brain barrier and trigger neuroinflammation, which has been strongly linked to mood disorders, brain fog, and cognitive decline. What this means is that your emotional state is not just a reflection of your thoughts or life circumstances, it's also a reflection of your gut health. A person with a dysregulated gut microbiome may experience anxiety or depressive symptoms even if their external life appears to be going well. Conversely, someone with a nourished, balanced gut ecosystem may exhibit emotional resilience in the face of real challenges. The good news is that the gut is highly responsive to change. When you begin to feed it well with fiber-rich vegetables, fermented foods, prebiotics, and a diversity of plant-based nutrients, you support the growth of beneficial bacteria. These microbes, in turn, produce short-chain fatty acids and other compounds that reduce inflammation, promote healthy neurotransmitter production, and calm the nervous system. Even modest dietary changes can shift the composition of your microbiome in a matter of days, leading to noticeable changes in mood and mental clarity. Sleep, often viewed as a passive state of rest, is in fact a vital process in which the body and brain engage in intense repair, restoration, and regulation. The importance of sleep for mental and emotional well-being cannot be overstated. It is not merely a break from wakefulness, but a critical component of the body's overall homeostasis. In particular, the impact of sleep on mood regulation, emotional resilience, and cognitive function is profound, making it an essential pillar in any discussion about how food and nutrients influence mental health. One of the most significant roles of sleep is its effect on the brain's ability to process and regulate emotions. During sleep, especially in the deeper stages such as rapid eye movement, REM sleep, the brain processes emotional memories and experiences. It is during REM sleep that the brain replays emotionally charged events, helping to integrate them into our emotional landscape. This process is crucial for emotional regulation. Without sufficient sleep, these emotional memories cannot be processed effectively, leading to heightened emotional sensitivity, mood swings, and increased vulnerability to stress. People who are sleep-deprived often find it more difficult to manage their emotions, react more negatively to minor stressors, and are more prone to feelings of irritability or depression. Sleep also plays a central role in restoring neurotransmitter balance. Neurotransmitters are the brain's chemical messengers that control mood, behavior, and cognitive processes. They include serotonin, dopamine, GABA, and norepinephrine, key players in regulating emotions, motivation, relaxation, and focus. Sleep is essential for the replenishment of these neurotransmitters, and chronic sleep deprivation can lead to imbalances that result in negative mood states, anxiety, and decreased ability to cope with daily challenges. For example, serotonin, often called the feel-good neurotransmitter, is synthesized during sleep, and its production is deeply tied to sleep quality. Lack of sleep, particularly in the early stages of the night when deep restorative sleep occurs, reduces serotonin levels, which can make a person more prone to feelings of sadness or irritability the following day. The relationship between sleep and the brain's stress systems is also critical. Chronic sleep deprivation triggers an increase in cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. Elevated cortisol levels contribute to anxiety, heightened stress responses, and an inability to relax. In a well-rested state, the body can manage stress more efficiently, restoring hormonal balance and returning to baseline after a stressful event. However, when sleep is disrupted or insufficient, this feedback loop becomes damaged. High cortisol levels combined with inadequate sleep create a vicious cycle where stress is magnified, cognitive function declines, and emotional resilience is significantly weakened. Beyond neurotransmitters and hormones, sleep also supports the physical structures in the brain responsible for mood regulation. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself and form new connections, is heavily influenced by sleep. Sleep strengthens the neural networks involved in emotional regulation, memory, and learning. During sleep, the brain also clears away waste products, including beta-amyloid plaques, which have been linked to cognitive decline and mood disorders like depression. This cleansing process is most efficient during deep sleep, emphasizing the importance of uninterrupted, high-quality rest. Without sufficient sleep, the brain struggles to clear these harmful byproducts, which can contribute to feelings of mental fog, depression, and reduced cognitive performance. The dietary choices we make can significantly impact the quality of our sleep. Food, and more specifically the timing and composition of what we eat, can either promote restful sleep or disrupt it. Certain nutrients are essential for the production of sleep-regulating neurotransmitters. For example, foods rich in tryptophan, an amino acid found in turkey, eggs, and nuts, are vital for the synthesis of serotonin and melatonin, the hormone that governs sleep-wake cycles. Similarly, magnesium found in leafy greens, nuts, and seeds plays a key role in calming the nervous system, helping to prepare the body for sleep. A deficiency in magnesium can lead to restless sleep, poor sleep quality, and heightened anxiety. On the other hand, the consumption of stimulants such as caffeine and sugar, particularly later in the day, can disrupt sleep patterns. Caffeine, by blocking adenosine, a neurotransmitter responsible for promoting sleep, can delay sleep onset and reduce the quality of sleep. Excessive sugar intake can lead to spikes and crashes in blood sugar levels, disrupting the body's ability to maintain stable energy levels throughout the night and potentially leading to nighttime awakenings. Therefore, it is not just the quantity of sleep that matters, but also the overall sleep environment, which can be significantly influenced by dietary habits. The timing of meals also plays a crucial role in sleep quality. Eating large meals close to bedtime can interfere with the body's ability to enter deep restorative stages of sleep. The digestive process requires energy, and when the body is still working to break down food while trying to rest, sleep quality suffers. Ideally, there should be a window of 2 to 3 hours between the last meal and sleep, allowing the body to wind down without the burden of digestion. Additionally, a balance of macronutrients at dinner, such as a small serving of protein with healthy fats and complex carbohydrates, can help maintain stable blood sugar levels overnight, reducing the likelihood of waking up in the middle of the night due to hunger or fluctuations in blood sugar. The importance of good sleep extends beyond just the emotional and cognitive benefits. It is directly tied to the body's ability to repair itself and function optimally. During sleep, the body releases growth hormones that support tissue repair, immune function, and overall cellular health. This healing process is essential not only for physical health but also for mental clarity and emotional stability. Without proper sleep, the body's ability to repair and restore becomes compromised, which over time can result in increased vulnerability to both physical and mental health issues. When we consider the role of sleep in emotional regulation, it becomes clear that a holistic approach to mental health should not only address stress management, diet, and exercise, but also place a strong emphasis on sleep hygiene. Cultivating good sleep habits such as maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, reducing screen time before bed, and creating a relaxing nighttime routine can help improve sleep quality and in turn enhance mood and mental resilience. When sleep is prioritized as a cornerstone of well-being, it becomes an invaluable tool in managing stress, enhancing emotional health, and optimizing brain function. In summary, sleep is not merely a time for the body to rest, but a critical phase in which the brain restores its emotional balance, processes memories, and strengthens the connections that allow us to cope with life's challenges. Through its complex influence on neurotransmitters, hormones, neural networks, and the body's stress response, sleep shapes our mental health and emotional well-being in ways we are only beginning to understand. The quality of our sleep can be profoundly affected by our diet, and conversely, good sleep supports cognitive and emotional resilience, creating a virtuous cycle of mental health. Prioritizing sleep alongside good nutrition and stress management offers one of the most powerful ways to maintain emotional balance and cognitive clarity in the face of life's demands. It's also worth noting that this connection runs both ways. Psychological stress can directly impact gut health by altering the microbiome, slowing digestion, and increasing gut permeability. So the loop is self-reinforcing. Poor gut health can worsen mood, and chronic stress can damage the gut, creating a vicious cycle. But understanding this loop also gives you power. It means that by taking care of your gut through mindful eating, stress reduction, and the avoidance of ultra-processed foods, you are simultaneously taking care of your brain and emotional well-being. The gut-brain axis is one of the most exciting frontiers in neuroscience and nutrition. It reshapes how we think about mood, depression, anxiety, and even motivation. It shows us that mental health isn't just in our heads, it's in our guts. And when we nourish our gut, we unlock one of the most effective and sustainable ways to elevate how we feel every single day. For many years, we viewed mental health and physical health as separate domains, one influenced by thoughts and emotions, the other by things like inflammation, immune response, and cellular repair. But modern science has dismantled that boundary. What we now understand is that chronic, low-grade inflammation, a biological condition most often driven by poor diet and lifestyle, is not just a risk factor for heart disease or diabetes. It plays a central, often hidden role in shaping our mood, cognition, and overall emotional resilience. Inflammation is the body's natural response to injury or infection. It's part of our defense system. When you cut your finger or catch a virus, the immune system releases molecules called cytokines to trigger healing and defense processes. This acute inflammation is helpful, even life-saving. But problems arise when inflammation becomes chronic, when the immune system is constantly activated, even when there's no real threat. This chronic inflammation can be subtle, invisible to the naked eye, but it quietly disturbs virtually every system in the body, including the brain. A major driver of this type of inflammation is diet, especially the consumption of ultra-processed foods, refined sugars, industrial seed oils, and an imbalance between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. These foods are not just nutrient poor, they actively provoke an inflammatory response in the gut and bloodstream. Over time, this chronic immune activation leads to the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines that can travel through the bloodstream and impact the brain. When these cytokines reach the brain, they can disrupt the delicate balance of neurotransmitters, alter brain plasticity, and even impair neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells. One of the most striking discoveries in the field of neuroimmunology is that inflammation in the brain can mimic and even cause symptoms of depression and anxiety. Studies have shown that elevated levels of inflammatory markers like CRP, C-reactive protein, and interleukin-6 are strongly correlated with depressive symptoms. People with chronic inflammation are more likely to experience low mood, lack of motivation, fatigue, and cognitive sluggishness, even if they have no prior mental health diagnosis. This suggests that in many cases, what we label as a mood disorder might actually be an inflammatory disorder in disguise. This also explains why some people feel dramatically better mentally and emotionally when they switch to a cleaner diet. It's not just about weight loss or more energy. By removing inflammatory triggers and introducing anti-inflammatory nutrients like leafy greens, berries, turmeric, omega-3 rich fish, and high-fiber foods, they're calming the immune system, they're reducing the background noise of inflammation that constantly agitates the brain. And as that noise quiets down, mental clarity returns, mood improves, and the mind becomes more adaptable and less reactive. What makes inflammation particularly insidious is that it often goes unnoticed. You might not feel sick, and yet it's silently altering your emotional landscape. It can amplify stress responses, increase sensitivity to negative feedback, and impair emotional regulation. A person with high inflammation might experience life through a distorted lens, interpreting neutral events as threats, feeling overwhelmed by manageable challenges, and lacking the inner resources to recover from emotional setbacks. These are not personality flaws, they are often biochemical consequences of an inflamed brain. And because the brain and the immune system are deeply intertwined, this process becomes cyclical. Poor diet fuels inflammation, inflammation disrupts mood, and poor mood drives behaviors like stress eating, poor sleep, and inactivity that further perpetuate inflammation. Breaking this cycle doesn't start with willpower alone. It starts with addressing the root cause, what we're feeding our bodies. This emerging science reframes nutrition not just as a tool for physical health, but as a therapeutic strategy for emotional wellness. It tells us that every time we choose an anti-inflammatory meal, we're not just supporting our heart or liver, we're giving our brain the calm, balanced environment it needs to function optimally. In this light, food becomes one of the most powerful and accessible mental health interventions available to us. And when we understand this, we no longer see eating well as a form of restriction or discipline. We see it as a direct act of emotional care and cognitive empowerment. When we talk about food and mood, we often focus on sugar, caffeine, or processed ingredients. But one of the most powerful and deeply studied nutrients for emotional health and brain function is something that rarely gets the attention it deserves: omega-3 fatty acids. These essential fats, especially a subtype called DHA or docosahexaenoic acid, play a profound role in how your brain is built, how it communicates, and how it regulates emotions. The brain is nearly 60% fat by dry weight, and a significant portion of that fat is made up of omega-3s. DHA in particular is a critical structural component of brain cell membranes. These membranes are not just protective wrappers, they're active, functional components that influence how efficiently neurons fire, how they transmit signals, and how they adapt to change. When DHA is abundant, neurons communicate smoothly. When it's lacking, signaling becomes sluggish and inefficient. This affects everything from attention and focus to emotional stability and resilience. But omega-3s don't just help the physical structure of the brain, they also influence the production and sensitivity of key neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. These are the very chemicals that regulate mood, motivation, pleasure, and emotional balance. In people with adequate omega-3 intake, the brain tends to be more responsive to these neurotransmitters, which leads to a more balanced emotional tone. In contrast, low omega-3 levels are strongly linked to higher rates of depression, anxiety, mood swings, and even more serious mood disorders like bipolar disorder. This connection isn't just theoretical. Numerous clinical studies have found that people with depression often have lower levels of omega-3s in their blood and brain tissues compared to non-depressed individuals. What's even more compelling is that supplementing with omega-3s, particularly EPA and DHA from fish oil, has been shown to improve mood, reduce symptoms of depression, and even augment the effectiveness of antidepressant medications. This suggests that for many people, emotional instability isn't just psychological, it's nutritional. Inflammation is another pathway through which omega-3s support mood. Chronic inflammation in the brain, as we've seen, is a known contributor to depression and cognitive decline. Omega-3s are powerful anti-inflammatory agents. They help modulate the immune system, reduce the production of inflammatory cytokines, and even help restore the integrity of the blood-brain barrier. When inflammation is reduced, the brain can function more efficiently, and the mind feels clearer and more balanced. The modern diet, unfortunately, is heavily skewed toward omega-6 fatty acids, which are found in vegetable oils and processed foods. While omega-6s are not inherently bad, an excessive ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, common in Western diets, promotes inflammation and disrupts brain function. Our ancestors evolved on a roughly 1:1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. Today that ratio can be as high as 21. This imbalance sets the stage for a cascade of physiological disruptions, including those that affect emotional health. Fortunately, rebalancing this ratio is not difficult. It begins with incorporating more omega-3 rich foods into the diet. Fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel are among the most concentrated and bioavailable sources. Plant-based sources like flax seeds, chia seeds, and walnuts contain ALA, a precursor to DHA and EPA, though the body converts ALA less efficiently. For individuals who don't consume fish, high-quality algae-based DHA supplements can offer an excellent alternative. The benefits of increasing omega-3 intake are not just long-term. Many people report feeling emotionally steadier, more focused, and less reactive within just a few weeks of making these changes. It's as though the brain becomes more resilient to stress and better equipped to handle the ups and downs of daily life. And these effects are particularly noticeable in children, adolescents, and older adults, populations that are especially vulnerable to emotional disturbances and cognitive decline. When we understand that omega-3s are not just nutrients but foundational building blocks of emotional health, we start to see them differently. They are not optional, they are essential, and their presence or absence can mean the difference between a mind that struggles and one that thrives. In a world where emotional challenges are on the rise and where pharmaceutical solutions often come with significant side effects, optimizing omega-3 intake is one of the safest, simplest, and most impactful strategies we have for improving how we feel from the inside out. Proteins are often celebrated for their role in muscle repair, strength, and physical performance, but their role in mental and emotional health is equally, if not more, profound. At the very core of emotional stability, focus, motivation, and cognitive function lies a delicate balance of neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that transmit signals between brain cells. And the raw materials your body uses to make these neurotransmitters are amino acids, which come directly from the proteins you consume. When you eat protein, your body breaks it down into individual amino acids. These amino acids are then repurposed to build new tissues, enzymes, and, crucially, neurotransmitters. For example, the amino acid tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with happiness, emotional regulation, and a sense of well-being. Another amino acid, tyrosine, is required to make dopamine, which governs motivation, focus, pleasure, and the ability to experience reward. GABA, a calming neurotransmitter that reduces anxiety and promotes relaxation, is synthesized from glutamine. Without an adequate supply of these amino acids, your brain simply cannot make enough of the chemicals that keep your mood steady and your mind clear. This biochemical foundation is often overlooked when people experience mood disorders. Many assume that emotional instability is purely psychological or that it's something to be managed solely through therapy or medication. But if the brain is starved of the building blocks it needs to function, no amount of positive thinking can compensate for that deficit. The brain cannot operate on an empty toolbox. It needs specific nutrients delivered regularly and in sufficient quantity to manufacture and regulate the complex cocktail of neurotransmitters that determine how you feel. The timing and quality of protein intake also matter. The body doesn't store amino acids the way it stores fat or carbohydrates, so regular intake throughout the day is essential. Skipping meals or eating protein only once a day can lead to fluctuating levels of amino acids in the bloodstream and therefore inconsistent neurotransmitter production. For many people, simply ensuring they eat a quality source of protein at each meal, especially breakfast, can lead to significant improvements in mood, energy, and mental clarity. It creates a more stable biochemical environment for the brain to do its work. Beyond neurotransmitter synthesis, protein also helps regulate blood sugar, which, as discussed earlier, plays a key role in emotional balance. Protein slows down the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream when eaten with carbohydrates, helping to prevent the sharp spikes and crashes that can trigger mood swings, irritability, and anxiety. This makes protein-rich meals doubly effective. They support the brain's chemistry and stabilize its energy supply. The quality of protein matters as well. Complete proteins, those that contain all essential amino acids, are the most efficient for supporting neurotransmitter production. These are typically found in animal products like eggs, fish, poultry, meat, and dairy. Plant-based sources like legumes, nuts, seeds, and grains can also be excellent, especially when combined to ensure a complete amino acid profile. For individuals on a vegetarian or vegan diet, paying close attention to variety and quantity becomes crucial to avoid deficiencies that can quietly undermine mental health over time. There's also an interesting interplay between protein, stress, and recovery. During periods of high stress, whether emotional, psychological, or physical, the body breaks down more protein than usual. This increases your need for amino acids, especially those like tyrosine and tryptophan that fuel your stress-coping neurotransmitters. If you're not meeting those increased demands with your diet, your emotional resilience may begin to erode. You might notice yourself becoming more reactive, less focused, or emotionally drained more quickly than usual. These are not signs of weakness, they're signals from your biology asking for support. It's important to understand that protein is not just about the body, it's about the mind. Every time you eat a meal rich in high-quality protein, you're investing in your emotional and cognitive well-being. You're giving your brain the tools it needs to stay balanced, motivated, and capable of navigating the stressors of life. The effects may not always be immediate, but they are cumulative and profound. Over time, consistent protein intake helps build a brain that is not only structurally strong but also emotionally resilient. In a world filled with quick fixes and chemical shortcuts, it's empowering to know that one of the most effective ways to support your mental health is through something as simple and accessible as eating enough protein. It's a daily practice of nourishment that speaks directly to the foundation of your emotional life, a practice that doesn't rely on guesswork or willpower, but on biochemistry and a deep respect for what the brain truly needs to thrive. Carbohydrates have long been a subject of controversy, often vilified in fad diets and misunderstood in conversations about health, but when it comes to mood, mental energy, and emotional regulation, carbohydrates play a deeply vital and scientifically supported role. They are not just a source of calories or quick energy, they are instrumental in supporting the production and function of neurotransmitters, especially serotonin, the chemical that contributes to feelings of calm, happiness, and emotional stability. To understand the connection between carbohydrates and mood, it's essential to look at how serotonin is made in the brain. The amino acid tryptophan, which we get from dietary protein, is the precursor to serotonin, but tryptophan doesn't easily cross the blood-brain barrier because it competes with other amino acids for transport into the brain. What helps tip the balance in tryptophan's favor is insulin, a hormone released in response to carbohydrate intake. When you eat carbohydrates, insulin causes most amino acids to be absorbed into the muscles, except tryptophan, which remains in the bloodstream and now has a clearer pathway to enter the brain. Once inside, tryptophan is converted into serotonin. This is one reason why people often feel calmer, more content, or even a bit sleepy after eating a carbohydrate-rich meal. Carbohydrates also provide glucose, the brain's primary source of fuel. Unlike fat and protein, which can be used by the body for many purposes, glucose is the preferred energy source for brain cells, and it's essential for optimal mental function. When blood sugar levels drop too low, as can happen with restrictive diets or long gaps between meals, the brain begins to suffer. People may experience irritability, brain fog, fatigue, low motivation, or even symptoms of anxiety and panic. These aren't personality flaws or mental weaknesses, they're biological responses to insufficient fuel. The brain is an energy-hungry organ, using up to 20% of the body's energy despite being only about 2% of its weight. Without a steady supply of glucose, mental clarity, emotional regulation, and cognitive performance all decline. That said, not all carbohydrates are created equal. The quality and timing of carbohydrate intake are just as important as the quantity. Refined carbs like white bread, sugary snacks, sodas, and pastries cause rapid spikes in blood glucose, followed by crashes that leave people feeling fatigued, irritable, and craving more sugar. These highs and lows create a biochemical roller coaster that can wreak havoc on emotional balance. Over time, frequent blood sugar swings can desensitize insulin signaling and contribute to inflammation, which, as discussed earlier, is a major driver of mood disorders. On the other hand, complex carbohydrates found in whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables release glucose slowly and steadily into the bloodstream. This provides a more stable energy supply to the brain and supports consistent neurotransmitter function. These foods are also rich in fiber, which not only slows digestion but also nourishes the gut microbiome, reinforcing the gut-brain axis and contributing further to emotional resilience. Timing matters too. For some people, consuming a source of complex carbohydrates in the evening can help promote better sleep by enhancing serotonin and melatonin production, both of which are influenced by carbohydrate metabolism. Sleep in turn is tightly linked to mood and cognitive performance. When you eat the right kind of carbohydrates at the right times, you're not just supporting your brain in the moment, you're laying the groundwork for how you'll think, feel, and perform in the hours and days ahead. Carbohydrates also influence the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis, which governs the body's response to stress. Diets extremely low in carbohydrates can activate this axis, increasing the production of cortisol, the primary stress hormone. While this response can be beneficial in short bursts, like during fasting or temporary low-carb phases, prolonged activation of the HPA axis through chronic carbohydrate restriction may lead to heightened anxiety, mood swings, and poor stress tolerance. Some individuals, especially those prone to anxiety or those with high mental workloads, may actually feel emotionally worse on a very low-carb diet despite it being touted as healthy or effective for weight loss. The takeaway here is not that we should fear or avoid carbohydrates, but that we should choose them wisely and use them intentionally. Carbohydrates can be one of the most powerful tools in your nutritional arsenal for stabilizing mood, reducing stress, and supporting clear, focused thinking. Rather than eliminating them, the goal should be to select forms that offer the most benefits, those rich in nutrients, fiber, and phytochemicals, and to eat them in a way that keeps your blood sugar balanced and your brain consistently fueled. When we understand the true function of carbohydrates in mood and brain chemistry, we stop treating them as enemies and begin to appreciate them as essential allies. They are not the cause of our emotional instability, they are often the missing link in restoring it. In a culture that thrives on extremes, the science points us back to balance. Carbohydrates, in the right forms and quantities, are not a threat to mental well-being, they are a lifeline to it. The gut and the brain are deeply interconnected in ways that science is only beginning to fully appreciate. And at the center of this connection lies the gut microbiome, a vast, dynamic community of trillions of microorganisms living in our digestive tract. Far from being passive passengers in our bodies, these microbes play a fundamental role in shaping our health, especially our mental and emotional well-being. What we eat directly influences the composition and activity of these microbes, which in turn affects how we think, feel, and behave. This intricate relationship is known as the gut-brain axis, and it is one of the most exciting frontiers in neuroscience and nutrition. The gut is often referred to as the second brain because it contains its own complex nervous system called the enteric nervous system. This system communicates with the brain through a network of neural, hormonal, and immune pathways, most notably the vagus nerve, a powerful information highway running from the gut to the brainstem. This means that signals generated in the gut can influence brain function directly and rapidly, shaping mood, stress response, and even decision-making. When the gut is healthy and in balance, the messages it sends to the brain are calming, stabilizing, and mood-enhancing. But when the gut is inflamed, or its microbial balance is disrupted, the signals sent to the brain can increase anxiety, contribute to depression, and impair cognitive clarity. The gut microbiome produces and regulates a surprising number of neurotransmitters. For example, an estimated 90% of the body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with happiness and emotional regulation, is produced in the gut. Certain gut bacteria also produce GABA, dopamine, and acetylcholine, all of which are crucial for managing anxiety, promoting focus, and maintaining a balanced emotional state. When the microbiome is rich in diverse beneficial bacteria, these neurotransmitters are produced in optimal amounts. However, a disrupted or imbalanced microbiome can lead to deficiencies, contributing to mood disorders and cognitive dysfunction. This disruption, known as dysbiosis, is increasingly common in modern society, largely due to poor dietary choices, chronic stress, overuse of antibiotics, and exposure to environmental toxins. Diets high in sugar, refined carbohydrates, artificial additives, and low in fiber can feed harmful bacteria and starve the beneficial ones. This imbalance doesn't just affect digestion, it leads to the production of inflammatory compounds, a weakened gut lining, and impaired communication between the gut and brain. One of the most damaging outcomes of this process is increased intestinal permeability, often called leaky gut, where the tight junctions in the gut lining become compromised, allowing toxins and partially digested food particles to enter the bloodstream. This triggers systemic inflammation and sends distress signals to the brain, affecting mood, focus, and emotional regulation. Supporting the gut microbiome through diet is one of the most powerful ways to influence mental health. Consuming a variety of fiber-rich plant foods, such as vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds, and whole grains, provides prebiotics, which are the preferred fuel for beneficial gut bacteria. When these bacteria ferment fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which have anti-inflammatory properties and support brain health. Fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, and miso are natural sources of probiotics, which help introduce and maintain beneficial microbes in the gut. These foods can help restore microbial balance, reduce inflammation, and improve communication along the gut-brain axis. There's also evidence that the microbiome can affect how we respond to stress. A balanced microbiome can help modulate the body's response to stress by influencing cortisol levels and reducing the overactivation of the stress response system. Conversely, an imbalanced microbiome may heighten stress sensitivity, leading to exaggerated emotional reactions and a reduced ability to cope with everyday challenges. In some studies, probiotic supplementation has been shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression, highlighting the profound impact of gut health on emotional well-being. The interaction between the gut and the brain is not one way. Psychological stress can also alter the composition and function of the microbiome. Chronic stress reduces microbial diversity, increases gut permeability, and changes the way gut bacteria interact with immune and hormonal systems. This creates a feedback loop where poor gut health increases stress, and stress further damages gut health. Breaking this cycle requires a dual approach, managing stress through practices like mindfulness, movement, and sleep, while simultaneously feeding and restoring the microbiome through diet. When you nourish your gut, you are nourishing your mind. You are creating the internal conditions for emotional stability, cognitive clarity, and a greater sense of calm and resilience. This doesn't happen overnight, but the changes can be surprisingly rapid. Within a few days of increasing fiber intake or incorporating fermented foods, many people report improved digestion, better mood, and greater mental sharpness. Over the long term, a healthy gut can be one of your most reliable allies in maintaining emotional balance and psychological health. In a culture that often looks for external solutions to internal problems, the gut-brain connection reminds us of something powerful. Your mental state is not just influenced by your thoughts or environment. It is profoundly shaped by what you eat and how you care for your inner ecosystem. This knowledge isn't just empowering, it's transformational. It means that each bite of food is not just nourishment for your body, but a message to your brain, a signal to your emotions, and a choice that can bring you closer to a more vibrant, stable, and joyful state of being. Micronutrients, those vitamins and minerals required in small amounts, might seem minor compared to macronutrients like proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, but their impact on mood, cognition, and emotional stability is massive. These tiny compounds act as critical cofactors and catalysts in nearly every biochemical reaction that takes place in the brain, including the synthesis and regulation of neurotransmitters, the management of inflammation, and the modulation of the stress response. When the body is even slightly deficient in certain micronutrients, it can lead to profound changes in how the brain functions and how we experience the world emotionally. One of the most well-studied micronutrients in the context of mood is magnesium. This mineral is involved in more than 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, many of which relate to brain function. Magnesium regulates the HPA axis, which is responsible for the body's response to stress. When magnesium levels are adequate, the body's stress response is balanced and resilient. When levels are low, people may experience heightened anxiety, irritability, and difficulty relaxing. Magnesium also plays a key role in GABA activity, GABA being a calming neurotransmitter that helps quiet the nervous system. Without enough magnesium, GABA doesn't work as effectively, which can make it hard to settle the mind or recover from mental fatigue. It's not surprising then that studies have linked low magnesium intake with higher rates of depression and anxiety. B vitamins are another group of micronutrients deeply tied to mood. Vitamins B6, B9, folate, and B12 are all essential for the methylation processes that help produce serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, neurotransmitters that regulate mood, motivation, and emotional stability. These vitamins also help reduce homocysteine, a compound that, when elevated, is associated with a greater risk of mood disorders and cognitive decline. Deficiencies in B vitamins can mimic the symptoms of major depression, fatigue, brain fog, low motivation, and even apathy. What makes B vitamins especially important is that stress, alcohol, and processed food consumption can deplete them rapidly, making them one of the most commonly overlooked deficiencies in modern diets. Zinc and selenium, though needed in trace amounts, are crucial for emotional regulation and mental clarity. Zinc is involved in neurogenesis, or the creation of new neurons, and supports the function of glutamate and GABA receptors, both of which are central to mood balance. It also has antioxidant properties, helping to protect the brain from oxidative stress. Low levels of zinc have been found in people suffering from depression, and supplementation has shown benefits in boosting mood when combined with other treatments. Selenium, meanwhile, plays a central role in the body's antioxidant defenses and supports thyroid function, which is directly linked to energy and mood regulation. Even mild deficiencies in selenium have been associated with increased feelings of anxiety, irritability, and low mood. Iron is another critical player in mood and mental function. It's essential for oxygen transport and energy production in the brain. When iron levels are low, as is common in menstruating women or those on restrictive diets, the result can be mental fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and low mood. Iron also plays a role in dopamine synthesis, linking it to feelings of motivation and pleasure. In children and adults alike, iron deficiency has been associated with attention problems, mood instability, and even increased risk of depression. Vitamin D, often called the sunshine vitamin, has a profound influence on mood through its role in regulating immune function and neurotransmitter synthesis. Low levels of vitamin D are common, especially in people who live in northern climates or spend little time outdoors. A growing body of evidence links vitamin D deficiency with depression and seasonal affective disorder, SAD. Vitamin D receptors are found throughout the brain, particularly in regions associated with mood regulation. Supplementing with vitamin D in deficient individuals has been shown to improve mood and reduce symptoms of depression in many cases. Even seemingly minor nutrients like omega-3 fatty acids, though technically not a vitamin or mineral, operate much like a micronutrient in their functional roles. Omega-3s, especially EPA and DHA, are integral components of brain cell membranes and influence neurotransmitter function, reduce inflammation, and support communication between neurons. Low intake of omega-3s has been associated with increased risk of depression, poor memory, and difficulty regulating emotions. What's especially powerful about micronutrients is how synergistically they work. The brain is a highly interconnected system, and the function of one nutrient often depends on the presence of another. For instance, vitamin C enhances the absorption of iron, magnesium helps activate vitamin D, and B vitamins often work in tandem to complete methylation cycles. Deficiency in just one of these nutrients can cause a cascade of dysfunction, while replenishing even a single depleted micronutrient can restore balance to a system that's been underperforming. This means that mental health is not only shaped by whether nutrients are present in your diet, but also by how well they interact and support one another. In a world where mental health is increasingly addressed with pharmaceuticals and therapy alone, we must not overlook the profound impact of micronutrient sufficiency. Food is information, food is chemistry, and food is medicine. When we nourish the brain with the essential vitamins and minerals it needs, we're not just fueling its basic functions, we're empowering it to regulate emotions, process thoughts clearly, and respond to life with resilience and adaptability. It's a silent revolution, one that starts not in the therapist's office or the pharmacy, but at the grocery store and on the dinner plate. Real change in mood often begins with real nourishment, and micronutrients are the quiet architects behind emotional equilibrium. When you start to view your meals as an opportunity to fortify the mind, not just feed the body, everything about the way you experience daily life can shift. The lows become less crushing, the highs more sustainable, and the middle, where most of life happens, becomes a place of greater calm, clarity, and grounded energy.